cold plunge, cigarette, and mouthwash. A baptism for the avant-garde.
It's a cool place to have a cigarette.
Wee Tammy went for a swim in the cove to try unclog his ears. He chose a bay far away from the commandeering eyes of the heavy-lidded lifeguards and the shark-bait children paddling, creating pompous splashes of foam pushing against their formidable tide. Tammy was seeking the discomfort of solitude. He stood alone in only the pants his mother had bought him, staring past the waves at a pair of quarrelling seagulls, being misted by the refreshing ocean breeze. He was procrastinating his icy plunge. He realized his attempt to prolong his time dry on the shore was redundant. It was futile to fear the inevitable. This procrastination did not suit his nihilistic philosophy towards life. He would soon be uncomfortable, so why prolong the wait? The sooner an action is complete, the sooner the next can begin, and the sooner it will end. Tammy understood that in the greater scheme of the universe, his comfort was absolutely irrelevant, so he found it irrelevant in the day-to-day too. He sighed deeply, shuddered, and threw himself in head first to speed up the rate in which his body would acclimatize to the freezing water. He spent about 15 minutes doggy paddling, being battered left and right by the punishing waves. After his swim by the rocks, he shook himself dry, gargled mouthwash by Denter's orders, and lit a cigarette. His gums had been aching ever since a nasty case of trench mouth the year previous. The dentist said it was nicotine, but wee Tammy thought it was stress. He inhaled deeply and squinted up into the overcast sun, casting shadows onto the reflective sea. Ocean breeze is a medicine, a cleanse for the sick and poorly to soothe the working week withdrawal of licking whiskey off of shoes that need kissing. Cold plunges were a baptism for the avant-garde. His usually sedated eyelids snapped to attention, no longer weighed down from the comfortable burden of routine. He had forgotten that the sky could be so blue. The salt water stung his hands, blistered from shucking oysters all week. For every oyster he shuck, he searched for a pearl to pocket. Wee Tammy was wasting his life hunting pearls. He even searched for them in his black and white dreams. The dream depicts a Monday workday like any other, shucking oysters for the kitchen hour in and hour out, counting soap suds to pass the time. But one shell doesn't break apart so easy. He pries it open with a firm twist, and out rolls his shining escape in the shape of a pearl, reflecting in the greedy whites of his eyes. He wakes up, face glued to his pillow in a pile of drool without fail every night at this point of the dream. Wee Tammy shivered, squinted, and gazed away from the overcast sun. He directed his attention towards the waves breaking over the jagged rocks, washing nets of seaweed onto the shore. He felt cheated. He was certain that life hadn't dealt him a fair hand of cards, or that quite possibly the whole deck was fixed. His grandmother used to cheat when they played bridge every Sunday. He discovered her deceitful approach to their weekly ritual for the first time just shy of 13. He spotted an extra deck of cards lodged up her billowy sleeve. He snatched the dupe cards from the clutches of her dress, resulting in a scolding so savage for his ill manners that he wept on the sitting room floor. She boxed his ears twice, then informed him that this was a valuable lesson about how life will treat a man. He gasped for breath in between puffy-cheeked sobs with throbbing scarlet ears. The lesson she taught wee Tammy was a cold one. She taught him that it was imperative that a man must take as much as he can from life, because life will always take as much as it can from you. Wee Tammy thinks she was just a sore loser, but the sentiment of the tainted weekly ritual remained prominent in his callous perception of manhood. Life never did seem to give him a head start or helping hand. His dad never took him fishing like he promised, or teach him how to change a tire. He had to figure out how to be a man all on his own. He cast a glance at the waves breaking over the jagged rocks, and he thought about how even after she had revealed as a cheat, they continued to play bridge every Sunday as though nothing was wrong. His ears throb dully at the recollection of the memory. He never learned from her lesson. Wee Tammy's been going through life ignoring cheaters playing cards. A distant foghorn blared, cutting through the seagull calls, and broke the tranquil rhythmic of the crashing waves, shaking him from his melancholic stupor. The fat Scottish vacationer yawned, awoken from dopey hibernation to return to his seasonal sandcastle with chip paint of red, yellow and greens. He sluggishly scratched his lobster tan lines which dissected his wrinkled tattoos, depicting past mistakes from his hopeless youth and lives previously led. With a deep sigh, he settled himself heavily into his foldable throne to survey his kingdom. He cracked open a can of lukewarm beer left over from the summer prior. It frothed over his stubby blistered hands, and he licked the bubbles off of his sticky tattooed forearm. The Sand Kingdom needs some tender loving care since last vacation season. Water had damaged the floorboards and some punk had carved their initials into the chip paint of the castle walls. The moat was full of crustaceans, and the radio no longer worked. 40 years of Monday through Fridays, and for what? All that wasted labour for a sullen beach grotto in a bay where the wind harshly whips exposed skin and cobwebs coat the windows like delicate curtains. The catcalls of seagulls complete with children's screeches over dropped sandy ice cream cones to be the first sound he gruffly wakes up in the hazy grey mornings. Holiday twice a year, long weekends scattered here and there, television to catch up on, furniture to fix, hair to regrow, backs to shave, cholesterol to lower, yellowing teeth to brush, children's birthday parties to attend, diets to be broken, responsibilities to ignore, life to be lived. Wee Tammy clambered over the rocks in return of the main bay with his towel loftily slung over one bony shoulder. He enjoyed his morning isolation, but any more time spent ceremonially with his thoughts might push him a little past comfort. He constantly craved solitude, but whenever he achieved his sought-after isolation, it was never quite like how he imagined. If he's the correct amount of busy, the weather's just right, drank 2 beers, and squints just enough, everything seemed okay. But if that balance was skewed even in the slightest, his ears would sting and his gums started to ache, as though a wee rotten black tooth was lodged in the back of his throat. It throbs with discomfort like a second heartbeat, commanding him to find something to occupy his fleeting time. He returned to the land of the living and glanced towards the men lined up like ducks sat in their camping chairs, drinking beer, guarding their beach homes while their wives busy themselves cooing and clucking to each other. He winced as his gums sent a sharp pang through his jaw at the sight of these aged, grumpy men. He feared them. He found them pathetic. He was petrified of becoming one. Wee Tammy fixated on one man in particular with wrinkled tattoos and a dirtied white tank top licking foam and beer off his forearm. It pained him. A shiver of discomfort washed down his spine and a ripple of goosebumps shot down his arms, leaving him far colder than the stinging salt water. The fat Scottish vacationer was doing his routine surveil of his kingdom. An intruder had just clambered over the rocks in the distance to attack his domicile. He was a wee sproutish lad, maybe early 20s, with wet hair sticking up in every direction and deep-set eye bags. The boy stood frozen, fixedly staring the vacationer down with a grimace, undressing him with a glare. This boy could see through him to his most vulnerable self. He was stripped of his possessions, no longer protected by his moat and high castle walls. He stared back at this scrappy kid and saw himself weeping on his grandmother's sitting room floor in the reflection of his grey, fatigued eyes. For an unflinching moment, stretched indefinitely, they experienced total understanding of one another. The pensioner saw his birth, boy adolescence, his hopeless youth and reckless 20s. He saw his mother praising his first staggering brave steps, and the soft touch of her lips on his bruised knees when he learnt to ride a bike. He could smell the stifling aroma of his grandmother's floral perfume, which would choke him each time she pinched his cheek. He saw the top of his father's head bobbing behind a newspaper locked away in his study, and felt the stinging disappointment of yet another promise to take him fishing the weekend coming. He saw his first awkward kiss in the back of a green Cadillac before our father interrupted by ripping him away by the scruff of his neck from her warm grip. He saw cartwheels outside of nightclubs to skip the queue, and hangovers spent stretched out sunbathing on the lawn. Wee Tammy saw his future more vividly than a fortune teller lying about the contents of a crystal ball. He saw an unhappy blonde wife with messy red lipstick gripping a glass of Chardonnay lying passed out on the sofa. He saw quarrelling children, overdue bills, and taxmen in itchy polyester suits with clipboards knocking down his door. He saw his children grow up and leave the family home with heads turned away, resenting the poorly enacted lessons he tried to teach and for the repeated promises he broke. He saw his retirement party with 4 balloons and a store-bought cake. He even saw his funeral with a dry-eyed widow sat in the front row of foldable chairs with more remaining empty rather than filled. He saw a staircase, but was not sure if it led up or down. They realized in the mirror of that moment, with the staircase that led neither up nor down, that they were perfectly the same down to the name. Life never even bothered to deal them a different hand of cards. They understood how predictable and formulaic it had all been, and wondered what it was worth. They wondered how many wee Tammies were out there. This intimate experience, though shaking both man and boy to their very core, was nothing but what they had known previously and chosen to ignore. The man knew it was too late, and the boy decided to try not care and fall back into the monotonous routine of searching for pearls, ignoring cheaters playing cards, and taking days off for cold plunges, cigarettes and mouthwash. A baptism for the Avant-Garde. Both man and boy looked away sheepishly, too embarrassed to check if the other was still staring in his direction, feeling as though they had cowardly backed down a fight they were sure to lose.